We're about a half hour away from arguments in a major abortion case before the Supreme Court. The case reached the High Court after Mississippi's only licensed abortion provider challenged a state law passed in 2018. It bans most abortions after 15 weeks. Lower courts said Mississippi couldn't enforce the law. It's the Supreme Court's first full term since Justice Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation, which gave the bench a 6-3 conservative-leaning majority. Now, in 2016, former President Trump told 60 Minutes that he would nominate Supreme Court justices who are anti-abortion rights. And many pro-abortion rights advocates are concerned about how the court will rule on this case. So for analysis, I want to bring in Carol Sanger. She is the author of About Abortion, Terminating Pregnancy in the 21st Century America. And she's also a professor at Columbia Law School. Thank you so much for joining us. So first off, let us just kind of break down the case, the arguments on both sides. What exactly will we hear from attorneys?
The attorneys for Mississippi are going to argue that the court should do one of two things. They should either strike down Roe v. Wade and another case called Casey altogether and take us back to where the law was in 1973 before there was Roe. So that's the first thing they're going to ask. The second thing, that's their primary goal, get rid of Roe altogether. The second thing they'd like is, if they can't have that, is to have the court uphold the Mississippi statute so that the law will be 15 weeks is the acceptable endpoint of when the state can no longer can criminalize abortion. So they want to uphold the 15-week ban, so 15 weeks of fetal gestation is their second preference. And both of these will have a very...
You can continue.
Oh, both of these will have a tremendous, if they get either one, will have a tremendous effect on the legality of abortion across the United States.
So just so people can understand, because people hear Roe v. Wade and they know that it is the case that upheld the constitutionality of access to abortion in this country, but I don't think they really sort of understand it. So to help us all understand, can you explain the precedents set by Roe v. Wade and also Planned Parenthood versus Casey?
Yes. Roe v. Wade in 1973 created the right to abortion. It was the first time there had ever been a constitutional right to make this kind of decision, this kind of reproductive decision, which is the decision whether or not a pregnant woman wants to continue her pregnancy. And so that was the starting point for all our political tumult over the abortion. Casey came along 20 years later in 1993, and Casey was a case that everyone thought was going to overturn Roe, and the U.S. government was asking it to overturn Roe, but it didn't. 3 judges said, we're not overturning Roe. We're going to allow states to regulate abortion more than we have in the past, but we're not going to overturn Roe because we are going to follow the legal doctrine of what is called precedent, which means when you have a case before you, you look to the last case that had similar facts and you say, is our case different from that, or is our case pretty much the same? Has anything drastic changed in the time between the two cases? And the court thought that all through in 1993 and said, no, we are not overruling Roe. That we are keeping its essential holding. And its essential holding is that abortion is legal in the United States up to the point of fetal viability. And viability means the moment when a fetus can live outside its mother's body and not die. So it can breathe, for example, it can breathe on its own. So the viability point comes up in Mississippi because at the time of Roe, viability was 28 weeks. By now, viability is about 24 weeks. And Mississippi has passed a law which says we don't allow abortions after 15 gestational age, 15 weeks of gestational age. So it cuts back the time even further for when a woman in Mississippi can have a legal abortion. And as we saw a few weeks ago in Texas, they have, sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is that, a similar law in Texas as well that the Supreme Court has also been taking a look at. And so increasingly what we've been seeing in some states is because they cannot outlaw abortion outright, we're seeing increasingly restrictive laws. And what you see in Mississippi is they only had one abortion provider in the entire state as a result of a lot of these different regulations and laws. But I want to talk about public sentiment. A recent CBS News poll found a majority of Americans actually support abortion rights. 62% of those surveyed said that the courts in 1973, that the ruling there should remain in place. 38% want to see it overturned. If Roe v. Wade was in fact overturned, what would abortion laws look like in the U.S.? Because what we're talking about now is the ability for individual states to kind of make their own laws in regards to abortion and abortion rights.
That's right. And so what would happen immediately, this decision by the court is not going to come down until June of 2022, next year. Because they take as much time as they want within their term to decide the case. And let's say that in June, they announce that they're overturning Roe. That would kick it back to the states. And there are about 22 states that already have passed legislation that says, if Roe is overturned, we automatically are criminalizing abortion. So that's about the 22 states have already done that. 13 states have already said if Roe is overturned, we're definitely not criminalizing abortion. But the interesting thing when you ask about public sentiment or public support, that's how things stand now. And it's a different question about what the lay of the land will look like to people once there is no legal abortion. And it's not as though you can, abortion is easy to get. It's already very, very regulated, and it takes money, it takes time, it takes planning, it takes often 2 trips back to the physician, all as a matter of law. And so I think women particularly, but men too, will begin to think, life is not the same when we don't have the option of abortion in cases where contraception fails or where some hasn't been used. So the public view now, 62% is pretty good. Really, it's rather high. But I think it will increase over time as people see this is very complicated to have no recourse to reproductive control without abortion. And Mississippi is arguing you don't need abortion anymore because you've got plenty of contraception. But I don't think all couples and all women see it that way.
Abortion rights advocates, some have said that this Mississippi law in particular, but others, that it is part of a larger agenda to challenge Roe v. Wade. That this law is headed to the Supreme Court is exactly what the plan was. What does it tell you that this court, with its 6-3 conservative-leaning majority, agreed to hear the case in the first place?
That is a big question. Why did they agree to hear this case if they're not going to do something with Roe v. Wade? They didn't need to hear this case. There are plenty of other cases coming up the judicial pike. It tells a few things. One, how very successful it is to have a President Trump, declare he was going to appoint anti-abortion judges, and the effect of that. He appointed Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, and they have made all the difference in the world for the likelihood that this case is going to be a hit. a strong hit against Roe. So that's one of the things it tells us. It also tells us how important voting is. That if the court is not going to defend legal abortion, then the way to go about it is to have your state legislatures make abortion a legal medical procedure, and that will be one of the next pro-choice moves. Is to move even harder on that point. So to use the legislatures as a way of getting laws passed that will vindicate the right to decide about abortion.
Carol Sanger, thank you very much. We will all most likely have to wait quite a while before we hear what the court's decision is. Typically, these decisions don't come out till the end of the term, which is in June or so. But really appreciate you talking to us today. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.